Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. Where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days. Welcome, everyone, to another of our virtual town hall meetings. We have got an amazing event planned tonight. We've got two persons as our guests. We have Senator Merrick and the Unwokable John Mark Ousley. Now, just a quick brief, because Senator Merrick is actually at work right now at the Capitol, so he's got some meetings he's attending, so he may have to jump in and jump out. He's right now in, so that's good. So just very, very quickly, I want you to make sure that you are monitoring right now clearly on the feed. I know you are, you're right here, but I want you to start sharing this and start asking your questions. So share, 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 and make sure the information tonight significantly gets shared all across the airways. And we want to get this all across to Oklahoma. And this is just not an Oklahoma issue we're going to talk about tonight. This is a United States issue. This is an education issue for us as far as what we're talking about, losing a generation. So I know Senator Merrick is passionate about this too. I want to remind you very quickly to download our app right here. It says, never bow down to tyrants, defy them. And we are never at a time in our history like now, at least in my lifetime, that we don't have a clear duty like we have right now to defy tyranny. Tyranny is when the people fear the government. Boy, is that not being propagated right now. But my friends, freedom is when the government fears the people. So make sure you download this app. I'll come back to this a little bit. This gets our schedules, and I'll talk about this later because I will be with Senator Merrick this Saturday in person. I'll tell you about that in just a moment.
Yes.
Without further ado, tonight, I want to bring in Senator Merrick. I met Senator Merrick late last summer, and we had dinner in Tulsa. He and I and Senator Hamilton, actually, and our wives. It was amazing. And beautiful, and we connected as human beings. It was one of the best meetings I've ever been a part of as far as initial introduction, and we became friends. And I consider it a great honor and joy to have Senator Merrick, Jake Merrick, as my friend. So, man, Jake, thanks for being on tonight. I appreciate you.
Well, the honor is mine. So love you like a brother. I know we're brothers in Christ, and that's what it's all about for us. I know it is for me, is who we are in Christ first. I'm a senator second. I'm a Republican second.
Yep.
And we're here ultimately to advance God's agenda, to be his representatives first. And so, it's always such a blessing to connect with someone else who believes the same, who has the same agenda. I know that's you. And so that's why I can, when I'm talking to other people about you, I say, I believe in him because I've met him. He's become a friend, a personal friend, and I can vouch for him. And there's others who may be running, who may be good people, but I can vouch for my friends, the ones I actually know. And to get to know you, I know that you are solid, that you do not compromise, that you have a biblical worldview. And so everything you say, you're saying from your heart, and you'll live and die by it. So that's the way I am, and I like to hang around like-minded people, and so I consider you a like-minded brother.
Oh man, we hit it off from the beginning, and I want you to know everything that he just stated about me. I would echo that with resounding gongs above the same thing about him. We help each other, we pray for each other, we encourage each other. I'll get a text from him once in a while and vice versa. And it's just really cool. We've developed a good relationship, and that's how you develop trust. Takes time. You look a person in the eye, spend time with them, and I really commend you for that. And it's been an honor and a joy. We are lifelong friends, no matter what.
Yep.
Right now, you're actually working at the Capitol right now in the middle of all kinds of stuff, which you always do, and we're so grateful for your service to this state and the people of Oklahoma, and actually all the citizens of these United States. So you're actually in a race right now. You're the senator of District 22. So talk about, if you could, like the issues that are central to your area of the state.
Well, I appreciate that. I am in a race. I was elected in a special session last summer. So I was actually sworn in April 14th of 2021. And so it was a real quick turnaround. So whenever Stephanie Bice was elected to Congress, she vacated her Senate seat, and I ran to fill her seat, fulfill her term. And so I fulfilled that. This is actually my first complete session that we're wrapping up now, finalizing some issues with the budget. But while we're wrapping up session, I'm also in the middle of a campaign for re-election. And so we'll have a primary. I have another Republican contender. So we'll have the primary June 28th, and same as yours. So June 28th, everybody has to remember to get out and vote. So critical. And I'm excited about it. You know, some people say, man, I can't believe somebody's running against you. And what I say is, I wish I had 10 people running against me. I wish that people were lining up at the door to step up to the plate. Yeah. That's my view of it, is I wish we had more people running and more people voting, actually believing in the process, engaging in the process, because that's how we ultimately protect our freedom, is the people getting involved. I tell you what, when I ran, my very first race was for Congress. And people were saying, why don't you try school board first? Why don't you try city council first? But it wasn't a matter of like my personal preference. It was a matter of where I believed God was leading. And so was this particular race. My preference had nothing to do with it. If it was my preference, I wouldn't be in politics at all. And so I'd be out hunting and fishing or running my business, you know. But this is a call. It's a mandate, and there's grace for it. I get energized doing what he's called and created me for. And so there are some things, some murky waters here we have to overcome. But and I'm excited about being in the fight. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, when I was questioning, why am I running for Congress? I looked at the Constitution and the requirements to run for Congress. And it was, you got to be a citizen of the United States and 25 years old. Like, don't have to be a lawyer, don't have to have a doctorate degree. It's, you know, you have to be a U.S. citizen, 25 years old, and then go and run, a citizen of the state too. And so I said, man, this was designed for the average everyday person to step up and serve their country and serve their state, serve the people as their representative. And it's so beautiful when you go back and you read the actual documents of where this came from. And I mean, I want to see more and more people saying, you know what? I think I could do that. And the fact is, you can, and you should on some level, whether it's a smaller office, I hate to even say smaller office, a school board, city council, state, whatever it is, you just need to be where God wants you to be. And if you're not running, you should be supporting people. Like my friend, Dr. Sherwood, you should be right there. I mean, I'll take all the volunteers and support I can get to, because we want to be in office, because we're there on a mandate, on a mission, and we will do what needs to be done. You know, that is what I believe really separates guys like us from other people who are running because it's a good idea or because they have a political ambition. They want to have a career in politics. I have no desire to have a career in politics. You know, I just want to serve the people and do what's right, to see the state flourish as righteousness becomes law.
You know, and I've watched, I will vouch for you. And I was asking you about your wife and daughters. You mentioned right now they're actually out knocking on doors.
They're knocking doors, putting out signs.
Yeah. And I will tell you, we've had that conversation before. We are so exactly the same in the idea of a career in politics. That is not even a discussion. It is not even ever a discussion. It's not even a concept. It's not even an idea. We are doing this because we feel a call and because it needs to be done as a service to mankind. And that was as pure as it can be.
That is.
You've been there, you know, a little over a year now, right? Mm-hmm. You've been there enough to learn a few things. And, you know, I want people need to know, what's it like, you know, to be there, good, bad, and the ugly in the Senate process?
Well, and people ask me that all the time, is it what you expected it to be? And honestly, I came into this with almost a blank slate, with no real expectations. I guess you do have the idea of the swamp, of expecting corruption. And I would say in some ways that was wrong. A lot of good people up here that intend to do good. And so I don't think that everyone up here has nefarious motives and they're trying to just get rich and all these kinds. There are some, I'm sure. I tend to hang out with others who don't have those motives. And so you tend to be in your own little bubble, think that, everybody's, you know, out here with pure motives. And then you get outside your bubble and realize, oh, wait, not everybody is. You know, there are a few things that are surprising. I would say one area that surprised me is what I believe is a lack of attention. How would I say? Not of attention, but I vote and I lead my life and I legislate on principle. So I have these guiding principles that I get from God's word and from the Constitution. And if it lines up with this, then I'm in favor of it. And if it doesn't, I reject it. And for too many, there is a big gray area where there's opportunity for compromise. And things get very cloudy because once you compromise in one area, then it opens the door for compromise in the next. And then it becomes like a tree branch, and you find yourself out on the end of this branch, and you're wondering how you got here, and it's hard to trace it back. Just like today, we voted on some budget issues, and we're voting now on the best way to expand government, the best way to offer more Medicare and things like that. And then you have to ask the question, hold on, I'm not here to expand government. And so I don't want to talk about the best way to expand government. I don't want to expand government. I want to, backtrack and erase all of these agencies and departments that we've created so that we can enlarge government. I don't want to fund them more. I want to defund them and get back to what government's actual function is. And so you see that it's gotten so far into the weeds that now we're talking about how we can do this, how we can like I said, expand government better. Well, we're on the wrong track. We got to get off that track and start thinking a different way. So me and a handful of others, vote against a big portion of the budget, not because that's the wrong way to fund that particular agency, but because that agency shouldn't exist in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so people might ask the question, well, why would you not fund that? I mean, well, that's not the role of government. That's the role of the church and of the people. And so, yeah, if we wanted to grow government and have this agency in place, then that would be a pretty good way to fund it. But I don't want that agency there at all. And so my vote is a vote of protest saying,
I'm pretty sure that because a lot of people, they just look at the title of a bill and then they look at the way a person voted, and they use that as ammunition against a person, but it's skewed, sure. It's false, it's like it's not true, and I watched that occur, and it's like it's shocking to me that occurs because we're susceptible to that anyway. But it's shocking me that it's used without people asking questions about specificities like you just did. That was a great explanation. We need smaller government. I think most people hear that statement and go, yes, we need smaller government.
Right.
But we're talking about, you could, in that case, voting against that, you could receive erroneous criticism, right?
Right. Absolutely. A part of a budget item today that we looked at, this is just one paragraph in the middle of 10 pages. But just as an example, it talked about how to expand. It was more funding to help hospitals deal with sickle cell outreach. And so that was the quorum call. And so I have just a few more minutes here. Yeah. But so the idea is, okay, we're dealing with sickle cell. How do we help hospitals address the idea of sickle cell? Well, we're asking the wrong question. The question is, should government be involved in hospitals at all? And so I would like government to get out of healthcare, to get out of education. But instead, we're in there and very much entangled in it. And we're talking about how to do it better. Well, I think we need to get out altogether. And so we're really lost in the weeds right now. And I'm not sure what we can do to correct it unless we just start. We just start one at a time. When there's presented, we say, no, not the role of government. No, not the role of government. And then we end up dealing with just a handful of issues and say, we'll deal with these issues. Yeah. But all of these other things is not the role of government. But people have gotten spoiled and dependent on the government. And they just want to bounce the ball and say, fix it. Well, guess what? It's not the government's job to fix it. And I believe that comes with a lack of faith, a lack of trust in God. Whenever we truly trust God as our source, our provider, then that's what we see the founders did, is say, God is our king. We don't want a king. We are free, independent people that God is enabled to do what we need to do to provide for our families, to own our own businesses. We don't need the government's help. In fact, we don't want the government's help.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole purpose in the beginning. But now we've become weak as a people as we've turned away from God. Weakness comes, and now we're reaching out for help, and we're reaching out to government when we should be reaching out to God.
That is really powerful because, we've dealt with that, as you know, in our life's profession, at Naturopath. I've tried to teach people once again to get this idea of self-governance back, because that was the idea. And now we have become so weak and so feeble in the idea of how to even, I was laughing the other day in my office staff, and don't take this wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I was thinking at some point in time, we're going to be the government's going to have to pay for someone to wipe your behind. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know how to do that anymore. And it's their responsibility to clean me up, and I'm not being fun with that, but it's like, that's where it is. It's your responsibility, Senator Merrick, to fix my problems. It's your responsibility, Dr. Sherwood, to fix my problems. No, it's my responsibility to look at myself in the mirror.
Right.
So
exactly.
How hard is it there? I know you got to run a little bit, but how hard is it to stand your ground in the middle of that minefield of compromise?
Yeah. There is pressure. There is pressure, and you just have to be willing to deal with the consequences. Too many people get caught up in this rut of voting politically instead of principally. And so what I mean by that is you're thinking about how to get reelected, or you're thinking about how to garner favor with leadership so that you can get bills heard. And you're playing this game of, I'll give this if you give that. And for me, that just doesn't work, because you start compromising and chipping away at principle. And so you have to be willing to stand your ground and vote yes or no, knowing that could mean your reelection. You may not get reelected if you vote that, and you have to be okay with that. And so there's collateral damage. You're you're throwing out the grenade, and it's going to blow up, and it may just blow up in your face, but it's what needs to be done. And so it's you just have to be willing to die.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to go all in. And if you're not, you don't need to be up here. That's how I feel about it. And so, for instance, I voted against 1647, which was the school voucher bill, very controversial, had the support of leadership here, of the governor, a lot of push, a lot of pressure to support it, had a lot of people in my ear. And it was suggested that this could mean your election. And that created some conflict in me. But I had to come back down to, okay, Lord, what is right? What is the right vote here? And in the end, I voted against it. And so I did it because I believe that was the right move, because I don't believe you should take government money, taxpayer money, and fund, and give it to a private entity, because there's strings attached, and you're not getting the freedom you think you're getting because there's strings attached, there's oversight. And so I just felt in my gut it was wrong. It was wrong principally. I had the backing of the Constitution, I believe. I had the backing of Scripture. So I was all in for it, and I had a confident no vote. And if it means I don't get reelected, I am okay with that. I go and I sleep well at night, and I can defend my vote. So that's where I want to be every single time. Now, I've made mistakes, and I'll gladly admit when I make a mistake, but I don't believe that was one mistake. And so I dealt with it in prayer. I dealt with it by looking at the Constitution, at principle. So you can't get caught up in the political votes. You have to stick with principle. And, that for me, that makes it easy. So it is hard knowing there's consequences, but it's easy for me knowing that I'm okay with those consequences. I'm okay with that.
I appreciate that, and I echo that. And I will tell you, as I've traveled around the state of Oklahoma, rural Oklahoma, all around everywhere, cow chip throwing in northwest Oklahoma to feeding Senator Hamilton's baby lambs in southeastern Oklahoma. I'll tell you this, when I explain it just like you did with the vouchers with strings, people's eyes get big, and they're like, we don't want that either.
Yeah.
So by and large, the citizens of the state of Oklahoma do not want that. Now, they support the money for the child in principle, yes.
Right.
they would support something along the lines of tax credits where there is no strings. It's your choice. And so everybody I've talked to wants that. So I will tell you that you are, from what I've heard, representing the wishes of the people of the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And it's not about, it's not about elections, it's about doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely honor what you just said. And that takes guts and courage, man. That's why you're my friend.
Thank you. It's, it is a noble fight. This whole thing is, and it loses that noble nature. As soon as it becomes something else, it starts to corrupt within. And I can't be who I need to be as a father and as a parent and as a pastor, knowing that I'm compromising over here and not sticking to principle. And so I have to live one life. It has to be congruent. It has to be the same no matter where I go. And that's how I live in peace. And so we can sit here and talk all day about individual issues and why I believe this and why I believe this. But for me, I believe is what I'm saying is, who am I? How do I live my life and base my decisions? Because that will translate into how I vote and how I legislate. And so we need to get back to character and integrity and belief in objective truth, not relative truth. Those sorts of things translate into righteous legislation. So when I'm vetting people myself who are running for office, that's what I'm looking for, is where's their character? Where's their integrity? Are they porous or are they solid? That's what I'm looking for. And then those individual votes can be shaped. You can gain understanding and information, but wisdom comes from God. So
excellent.
That's where I'm at.
That's excellent. And I will tell you, for all of my friends out there that I've got the opportunity to get to know, you need to share Senator Merrick's stuff. What's your website, by the way, so people can go there?
JakeForTheState.com.
Jake,
nice and easy to remember.
I love it. And folks, you need to support Senator Merrick. Support him. This is the kind of men we need in the Capitol right here. This is the kind of individuals we need that have an uncompromising, sold out character for what is righteous. And I will tell you right now, folks, I will go to the brink of death for this man. That's how much I believe in him and his character. So you got to vote JakeForTheState.com. So I know you got to roll, man. So 30 seconds. What do you got in the way of hope for all the people?
The tide is turning. We're seeing it on a national level with the House and the Senate. We're seeing that, but I'm seeing it at the local and state level. People are rising up, like everyday people saying, I think I'm going to step in the fight, and not just step in, I'm going to get on the front lines. And then you see others that are rallying around them and saying, yes, we're going to do everything we can do to get you in there. I get a kick out of beating big money because the establishment believes they can just throw money at it, just throw a ton of mailers in the mailbox, and they'll win every election. Well, that's not the case anymore. People are really wanting to vet and to know who's out there and who's behind this face, who's behind the money. And so people are wising up and they're asking the questions that need to be asked, and people are stepping up to the plate to run. So I'm excited about the future of the Senate here in Oklahoma, because we have some really good candidates running that I believe the same way and are willing to take this hard stand.
I love it. And let's pray in Jesus' name, according to his will, that you will be there another term, because I know that as an Oklahoman, you're the kind of guy that I want down there, reasoning, thinking, using your intelligence, but also using God-given wisdom. So JakeForTheState.com. I appreciate you. So folks, if you live down in District 22, you got to support this man. Get out there, help him out, give, do it. If you're called to give right now, you need to do that. Seriously, it takes money, but you know what? It takes a heart, and this man's got a heart. So support the cause. I appreciate you. So, man, look, Jake, thank you for being here. I certainly appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you on Saturday. We'll be together. I'll tell people about that a little bit later, but we'll be on the same stage Saturday in Edmond, Oklahoma. Cannot wait.
I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to serving the next 4 years with you.
Come on, let's go do
it. John Mark, I'm going to watch the rest of yours later. I got to run, but I'm looking forward to hearing yours later.
All right, catch you later, man.
All right, thank you. Love you. Bye.
Love you too, man. Folks, that was amazing. And I know you appreciated Senator Merrick as much as I did. And I want you to keep your questions coming, right? This is important. So I'm monitoring these things. He had to run, obviously. He's in the middle of a session down there with a lot of moving parts. So we appreciate and respect his time. So I'm monitoring the questions down here, and I want you guys to make sure you're going to share as we're going through this tonight. My next guest tonight, which I'm super excited about, I talked to him a while back, a couple months ago, maybe something like that. And I get this message on my cell phone from Senator Warren Hamilton, actually, and says, you need to talk to this guy. And I look at the contact, and it's this name, Unwokable John Mark Ousley. And I'm like, who is this guy? What does this mean? So I call him, and you'll understand, as I now understand, the dude is unwokable. And I mean, that's a great term. So, hey, man, do you go by John or John Mark? What's best? Oh, you got to turn on your sound. He'll get it in a minute. Oh, it was on for a second. There you go. Oh, almost. Look, how about it's going off and on? Go. You're back.
All right. Sorry about that. Too many buttons.
Hey, so tell everybody who might not know who you are a little bit about yourself.
I am a current graduate student at ABD in choral music at the University of Oklahoma. I've been there since 2017 and actually did my master's there as well, taught in Oklahoma. But most of my work in the past 3 or 4 years has been in the realm of education advocacy and some independent journalism, and just trying to get the word out about OU's woke turn, is kind of what I call it. It's critical turn, and what that means for the state of Oklahoma, not just our universities, but also how that trickles in to K through 12 schools. And that has been the majority of my work in the past 3 years. I've met with Governor Stead. I've met with lots of legislators. I've met with Secretary Walters. I've met with people all across the spectrum to discuss the issue, and am very committed to helping people understand what is happening in their country via their education institutions.
So you've met with people over the last 3 years to try to get this information out there. Now, I'm going to gather by us having this conversation and gathering back to we still have a problem. We still have a problem going. So explain to people out here that are like, we don't have that going on.
No, we very, sorry.
Yeah, so take a few minutes to convince them that we do have this going on.
Okay. We absolutely do have it going on. First of all, 1775 was a valiant effort, and I think that it is the first step in a very long road. But the problem is that the rules haven't been in full force the whole time, and you also have to understand they call this. This began all the way back in the 1960s. You know, you can actually relate Roe versus Wade to critical theory and the ideology that spurned that. If you read that ruling, that opinion, it talks about penumbras and how you can just create things out of nothing. Well, that's what critical theory does, and critical theory is the basis for critical race theory, critical gender theory, queer theory, all of those kinds of things. And you're seeing that being infiltrated throughout the state in all of our schools, not just our schools, but our businesses. And there's a weird marriage that happens there. And 1775 was a great effort. I think it's the first step in the right direction, but the rules haven't been in force long enough, even though we had temporary rules. And probably need to be reworked a little bit in order to circumvent the efforts being made by the administrators, the teachers' unions, the departments of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I call divisions of ideological enforcement, because their only job is to integrate and embed critical race theory into everything your teachers do. They aren't an academic office the way that you would think. They don't have teachers in the office, except for that they recruit people to be on the team and watch the other teachers. These offices are only designed to infiltrate and embed critical race theory, critical gender theory, critical theory in general into the basics of everything your teachers do with your students. The DEI director of Norman, Oklahoma, for example, said in her teacher training that equity and your commitment to equity, which is not equal opportunity, but engineered outcomes that demand discrimination in order to make them happen. It's not optional, is what she said. That means that whether your teacher is putting something on the wall, that's going to be approved by DEI. The DEI walks through schools and has teachers walk through schools and tell on each other about what's on the walls. Does it represent the DEI message? That's how deep they are embedding this into your child's curriculum. And if you think it's not in your school, you may be right if you're out, in a small school out in the middle of, a non-metropolitan area, but it's definitely in all of the metropolitan areas here. And any place that has an office that is called DEI or has the word equity in it, there is critical race theory, there's critical gender theory, and it will be there for as long as these offices are in existence and in your schools.
For people that don't know, John, DEI stands for what?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
And those, sorry.
No, I think it's interesting because this goes back to even when I was on the police department, and it's just striking me right now. I was involved in recruiting, and I was told by the powers that be that I am to recruit people that mirror the community as far as a demographic. On one hand, I would see that could be beneficial for somebody to be able to relate. On the other hand, I was sort of steered in the way of focusing more on that than qualifications. And it bothered me to the core. And it still bothers me to this day, because I found that when I was thinking too much about that in including certain persons based upon things that were not about qualifications only, I found that mistakes were made. Later on in the career, there would be mistakes that maybe were tragic that would hurt the citizens. So you're right, it's been around, and I don't think people really understand the significance of that. Now, you mentioned that you're at OU, Oklahoma University, and that is an agenda, a push there at Oklahoma.
Yes, very much. Actually, the University of Oklahoma is what you would call maybe the brainstem, the spine, the nervous system of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the entire country. And I want your audience to understand this. It's very important that critical race theory is DEI. DEI is critical race theory. Critical race theory is the ideology. And you hear oftentimes that people will say, well, that's a college level legal course. Yes, that is factually correct to an extent, but the ideology has moved out into education, into corporate spheres, all over the place, in every institution that it can get its hands on. So you have the ideology, right? But you also have critical race theory as a discipline, as a philosophy, as an academic study. It has two parts. It has philosophy and it has praxis. Praxis is Latin for in practice. It's something that teachers use all the time in their in their, it's a term that teachers use all the time in their education, because what it means is taking what you know, whether that's math, science, social studies, all those things, and then putting them into practice in the classroom, right? Well, critical race theory has a praxis set that demands that people become activists for a political agenda. And all political agendas are made actionable through policy, through public policy, through institutional policy. That is what you'll hear called anti-racism. So you have three pillars. You have critical race theory, the ideology, you have DEI, the praxis or in praxis, and you have anti-racism, which is that practice in public policy. I call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I'll explain in a second, they're divisions of ideological enforcement that are designed to enforce the anti-racist policies to create equity of outcome between disparate groups of people based on nothing more than two things: the way they look and what they think. And this is something that I want to make sure that every listener understands, is that critical race theory is not about race, believe it or not. It hits that way, but its real goal is to weed out all diversity of thought. And they use identity to do that. You saw that very much in Bria Clark in Norman, Oklahoma, where the first thing she did when she defunded the police was, after the fact, institute a DEI office in the city and in the police department that have input into who is hired. Well, that's going to do two things. That's going to make people not, the people who quit because they defunded the police, which were many, they either retired, great people, or they moved to other professions, or they moved to other areas to do the same job. You've lost them. And now the new people who are hired are going to have to write a DEI statement. They're going to have to go through the motions to say, I agree with the notion of equity as creating equal outcomes using discrimination at the front end of your policy, your anti-racist policy. And so it's very pervasive. It can seem very complicated, but when it comes down to it, it's a mode of operation designed to call everything racist until you control it. That's basically what James Lindsay says that all the time. Critical race theory is calling anything that you want to control racist until you control it.
That is like strong stuff, because, and I want folks, get your questions coming right here. I'm monitoring these things. Keep them coming here. This is good stuff, right? So just make sure you get them coming here. There's got some things coming in here for you in a minute. Okay, this is great, John. You have been a crusader of bringing attention of this issue to our elected officials, to people in charge that could do something about it. What has been your experience? I mean, we've talked, I know there's frustration there, but what's been your experience so people can understand how hard you've worked and the results that you've got?
Well, I will say this, that there are many, many officials in the state government, in the school board, across the spectrum of Republicans, for sure. I've not met any Democrats who are really devoted to stemming the tide. You know, you have the people that wrote the House Bill 1775, the people who work on the rules, and these bridge, all kinds of different gaps. These are people that may disagree on school choice, but they all agree that critical race theory doesn't belong in our schools because it makes oppressors and people who are oppressed automatically based on how you look and what you think. So my main focus has been on the University of Oklahoma. Over the last few months, 6 to 8 months, and going back even to right after the defund the police, when I first got connected with Unite Norman and some of those people, have been trying to point the light at the top of the problem, because we can go school by school, teacher by teacher, fire all the teachers that may do this, which, will cause problems on a number of different levels. But if we don't go after the source of what is pushing this into our schools through the teachers that they train in the institution, then all of it will be for naught. Because over a long enough period, right now, the College of Education at the University of Oklahoma has a DEI dean. And in almost every college, they're instituting DEI committees made up of students and professors and administrators whose only job is to look around in every classroom, just like I was explaining for the K through 12 schools, and to make sure that those spaces, as they call them, are preaching the DEI CRT message. And so I've worked pretty tirelessly over the last 8 months to a year trying to get to the OU Board of Regents, whether that's through Governor Stitt or whether it's through the Board of Regents directly. I've tried to start a petition to hold Joe Haraz accountable for stemming free speech and causing a atmosphere on campus that lends to viewpoint homogeny of one way of thinking. And we've made some headway, but not near enough. And I'm concerned that, especially with the most recent Board of Regents appointees, that we don't have the people who might be willing to do what is necessary to save the University of Oklahoma. I think you've got about 3 years, because once OU goes to the SEC, it's over. And that's by design. And I know everyone loves football. I love football. Boomer. I'm a Sooner all the way. But there is a economic incentive to keep this in schools. And sometimes I'm concerned that economic incentive supersedes what's best for the minds of our children, not just in the university. And they have academic freedom, of course. You can study this stuff, but mandating it from an administrative position called a division that requires that everyone view and make sure that it's happening throughout the university has never been seen in a university before. And all the teachers that come out of the College of Education are going to go into, not all of them, but they're going to go into schools all over the country, but especially Oklahoma. And so you can create all the school choice schools you want. And I'm deciding to be agnostic on school choice. I have some opinions, but I think it's over a long enough period of time, if we don't end the woke teacher pipeline, if we don't stop DEI at the universities and then in our institutions and schools, it's just a matter of time before these teachers coming out of the universities and administrators coming out of the universities take over those schools too. You're seeing them take over private schools all over the country. And there's very little mechanism to be able to hold them accountable. So I think we have to start with OU. And I'll tell you this, I can talk. So if you need me to be quiet, just go ahead and say that. But if OU and OSU lead on university, if they were to take the step as the first D1 university and lead, because a majority of the people in this country are not for this. When they find out what it really is, when they find out how it's actionable in the classroom, when they find out what the universities are doing with it, they're not for it. It would start a wave across this country that would help stem the tide, like we've seen with Disney just recently and Chris Rufo. Many companies right now are Netflix is, taking off some of its woke programming and telling its woke employees that, hey, either get on board with what our programming is and free speech, or find a different job. It only took one institution, and OU could be that institution. OSU could be that institution. We just need the right people in the right decision-making places to start that wave of freedom and that wave of freedom of speech and freedom of thought throughout our universities and our schools.
And just so people understand, so I want people to get this, and what you're saying is, and of course, me being functional medicine trained, I'm always taught to go, upstream as far as you can to determine the original root cause of the problem. And that's exactly, folks, what John is talking about. The root cause of the problem is the genesis, the birthing, the bringing about, the raising of these teachers that have these agendas, that have this training, that are going to be in all of your school systems, whether public or private or whatever you do. And then further, what he stated was Oklahoma is sort of an epicenter or a brainstem of this in these United States. Now, just so people understand, John, the taking of a stand has got to be back to the Board of Regents, et cetera, that relationship there. So take people through the idea of how it would be changed. Would it be like, who? First of all, people don't know. You can tell them who appoints the Board of Regents, and then how does that change take place that you're proposing?
Well, first of all, the governor appoints the Board of Regents. And as of right now, I believe all but one are his appointees. And it was members of this board at the current moment that instituted DEI. Because when Joe Haraz became president, there's a whole line of that I can go back. I've written stories on it. You can go to unwokable.substack.com and read about this. But this was a concerted effort going back many years. If you remember President Gallagher, he tried to come in and do the right thing and got ran off after 8 months. And sure enough, Joe Haraz came in, and the first thing he said is, we need DEI. The second thing he said was, we need to revamp Title IX, and we need to go to the SEC. All these things are the same thing that happened at the University of Missouri back in the early 2010s, early to mid 2010s, when Michael Brown and all that was happening. And they used George Floyd, they used these sometimes manufactured outrage incidents on the University of Oklahoma campus to embed this into your equal opportunity office, which is the institutional equity office now, and the DEI office. It's all housed there now. And so what you've got to do is, first of all, we need a new president. I mean, the Joe Haraz has proven to be a true believer to the point that he writes articles, talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, free speech. So he's giving you 3 qualifiers for what it is that you can say on campus. And basically what that means is that if what you say offends us, we're going to remove you. We're going to include you to leave, and I want to say that the inclusion is a very specific thing. They take the legal term, and inclusion automatically implies exclusion of something. And they take that base legal term. Justice Scalia talks about this in one of his books, but that there's an implication of exclusion when you use the word inclusion. And they know that, but they use the common term to make you think, oh, well, we want everyone. They want people of different colors, races, genders, whatever they want to say. I don't doubt that, but they want everyone to think the same. And so the governor appointed most of the Board of Regents, who made Haraz president, who now vote on every bill or every measure to fund every DEI officer, every dean, every DEI investigation officer, because they have people that go through and investigate instances of inequity throughout the campus. That's your Board of Regents. And I'm very much hoping, I don't know the 2 men very well, I've done a lot of research on them, but that just got appointed. And I know that, there are several that are good, Governor Keating, Rick Nagel, all these that have a very good conservative background, and you would think would be interested in saving their university from this. And I think probably are, but they have to have enough backbone, because Gallagher left because he was ran off and he was bullied out by a very small number of activists, teachers, and students on campus, ultimately led by Joe Haraz. And so they can undo it. And so you've got to have probably a governor that's going to put the right people in that office, I would say, because he's the one that appoints them. And then they've got to have the strength of character to find a different president and do what is best for the university as a whole and for all of the academic fields in the universities, not just DEI.
Man, that is like strong stuff. I want to ask a couple questions here. this is a question from David. What exactly is the relationship between OU and the state of Oklahoma, and how much? I think he answered the question about how much influence the governor had. So talk about the relationship with OU, Oklahoma in general, and then moving to the SEC. What does that mean specifically?
Okay, the state of Oklahoma, as with everything, the legislature has the power to fund or defund when it comes to state funding, right? But all of that is funneled line item through the board of the state regents for higher ed, down to the OU Board of Regents and the OSU Board of Regents, all of the regents that control the universities, who funnel that to the president, and the president pretty much makes every actionable decision. These boards are usually comprised of very accomplished people, but they don't go over things that are fine tooth comb. But there's also a lobby there that mimics the teachers unions. It's the higher ed lobby is the second biggest lobby in the state of Oklahoma. And why is that? It's because of football. It's because of the Sooners. It's because of the Cowboys. And that is a giant revenue stream into the state. And you saw that when the governor and the first bill in 2021 came up, the Save the Women's Sports Act, the NCAA, before it ever got out of committee, came up and said, well, we'll pull all of your championships out of Oklahoma, $10 million. And boom, it got stalled. Interestingly enough, you don't see them griping after the governor just signed that. I have some thoughts about that, but that's not the issue. Is that the SEC and the whole conference system is very much a woke progressive agenda, and it uses. When I sat the first time in the big office with three of the top people at the University of Oklahoma, they said, we're doing this because the athletics department wants it. Because the students in the athletics department want it, and they pay the bills. And, I think we should not be sacrificing the minds of our students or teachers throughout the state and the country for football, and that's very much connected. So, and then that lobby has a lot of influence over the people who vote in the legislature, and I'm not going to disparage anyone's intent, but there are lots of, politics going on here. And I firmly believe that if we had a little bit more hammer, a little bit more standing on principle when it comes to American values, when it comes to judging people not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character, if we had a little bit more of that as being the precedent and a less of, the monetary end of things, that we might have seen a bit more movement here in the last few months in getting rid of this. So those are the basic connections.
John, I mean, you are a treasure trove and wealth of information. When I talked to you the first time, I was you couldn't see me, but my mouth was wide open. And
I actually can't see you now, but that's okay.
It was interesting. I was like, this guy is like informed, very educated, and knows what's going on. We're running out of time here, but I want people to be able to connect with you. Again, give them your website, John.
Okay, you can, I do my writing and some podcasting on unwokable.substack.com. You can find me on YouTube at Unwokable, and it's without an E, so it's UNWOKABLE. And I'm on Twitter. You can search Unwokable that same way and find me, but my handle is at ACS against CRT. And you can find me there. And that's where I do most of my sparring, so to speak. So
yeah, I've actually observed some of that sparring, and you have a pretty good left jab. I'll tell you right now.
Thanks, sir.
I just really want to thank you, John, for coming on tonight, and I really want the people that are listening right now on the stream to thank John and Senator Merrick for coming on tonight. And keep your questions coming. I know as we run out of time here. I'll do my best to get the questions to John and get the answers to you. Okay, so we'll make sure we keep it coming, but keep the feed going and share this, folks. It's super important that you understand what's going on. John, and stay with me because I'm going to do a couple of remarks to close before you go off. But
yes, sir.
In the final 30 seconds, you got what do you got for the good of the order, or maybe a little bit of hope for people?
Well, the first thing I always say at the end is they don't need your guns if they have your children. And I got that from Kendra Wesson, who is a friend and doing good work. But it's true. But the tide is turning. Jake was right. What's happening with Disney, what's happening with some of these institutions that are finally starting to hit the reverse button on some of this stuff, we cannot let up. We actually have to go stronger now. And if you do that, if we find profiles and courage in every single teacher, administrator, politician, we can get this done. We can save our country. But the time is ticking. We're at the very end of the long march through the institutions, and we don't have much longer to stop it. So keep fighting, watch your schools, watch your teachers, watch your administrators, and hold them accountable and know what they're teaching. And America is a powerful, strong, God-filled place. And if we hold tight to that, we can save our country.
John, you are quite an American, sir. And I was actually talking to Kendra today, and I will echo what John said. She's an amazing patriot. We'll have her on actually here on a virtual town hall on June the 5th. So I'm excited about that. Folks, keep your questions coming. And again, a lot of great comments coming up here tonight. So I just want to remind you folks that as both of our guests, Senator Merrick and John Mark Ousley, have shared, Unwokable John Mark Ousley, I might add, they've shared their heart, their passion, true knowledge for doing the right thing, even though it may not be the popular thing, based upon monetary, economic, and maybe personal influence issues. It takes courage to stand up. It takes guts to stand up. It takes a character that is unique. Going back to our founding fathers' history, before even the Declaration of Independence was signed, there was discussions like this. They really were. We weren't around, but we were around because history follows us in our heart. The history of the American is in us. And those discussions were had way back when with people just like this, just like you, just like me. And they were dreaming of what could be done and what could be achieved if they just stood up. They had that vision that they could see and they could taste, but they hadn't achieved it yet. They didn't know how they were going to get there. They just knew they had to take the first step in the right direction. They didn't know if they were going to live or die. They just knew it was worth dying for. They didn't think about anything about the cost because they counted the cost, because they looked at a generation, the one coming behind them and the one in front of them. And they said, you know what? We're going to do it for both, the one behind us and the one in front of us. We're going to stand up. We're not going to back down. And folks, that's exactly what we're going to do. A couple things tonight before I sign off and we say good night and bid you adieu, just to remind you once again of our app. And it's right here. It looks like this. Never bow down to tyrants. Defy them. And we're at a place right now where there is tyranny abounding. In other words, they're making you do stuff because you fear that you can't step up. But at that moment in time, we don't have a decision. We have an obligation. To save our country, defiance becomes your duty. And I want you to understand that, folks. It's that big of a deal. Now, a couple of events coming up. Tomorrow night, I will be actually in Newcastle, Oklahoma, McLean County GOP, in person at 7 o'clock. Friday night, I'll be at the Stevens County Fairgrounds in Duncan, Oklahoma at 7 o'clock. Saturday, I'll be at the Conscious Community Co-op in Edmond, Oklahoma. That will be at 1 o'clock. Senator Merrick will be there as well that day, so it's going to be great. You can see us both. Saturday night, I'll be in Norman at the Embassy Suites Hotel. We've got an event there featuring Mr. John Babier's coming in to talk about the importance of godliness in government. Pretty cool. And so I want to have you there. And then Sunday, I'll be speaking at the Lighthouse of Hope Church in Okemah. Can't wait for that at noon, and a whole bunch of stuff coming next week. So look, folks, get involved, get in the game. Freedom is not a spectator sport. It's really not. You got to get involved, folks. And getting involved is becoming part of the solution. Not getting involved is remaining part of the problem. Folks, we need to step up our game right now. We are on the edge. We're on the edge of a victory, or we're on the edge of a permanent defeat. That's as clear as I can be right now. We have an opportunity in front of us that's absolutely sitting on a silver platter. The patriot movement, the freedom movement, the godly movement, the constitutional protection movement, and the We the People movement is louder and more resonant right now around our state and nation than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's continuing to get louder. The people's voices are getting stronger. They're getting more confident. So I encourage you with every single thing I am to get behind this movement. You got to vote on June 28th. You got to get involved. You can go to our website, Sherwood 2022, and see all of our issues there. You know what we stand for. You know where we're going, and we know how to get there. So let's join together, and let's change the country. One city, one county, one state at a time. And folks, it can begin right here in Oklahoma with our 77 beautiful counties with all the awesome people. This wonderful state of Oklahoma can be a lighthouse, a beacon of hope for the entire world to see, and especially these United States. So on behalf of my wife, my beautiful queen, my prime rib, my best friend, Dr. Michelle, and I, we want to wish you the best of nights. Really continue to send your thank yous through the chat and the feed for our guests, Senator Jake Merrick and John Mark Ousley. We'll make sure to go to their website, support them in all ways. Keep them in your prayers, lift them up, and help them in all ways, because I support them in all ways, and they're great people. So I wish you the best. May you have the best night. May God bless you. May he bless this wonderful state of Oklahoma. And may God bless these United States of America. Good night.
We have up is down, left is right, bad is good. God, the author.
God wants to bless America, but it starts with his people repenting and the ending of.
We minister 20 years. It was in prayer and to run. And so I'm excited to share step play.
This is a man after God's own heart, who's with
he's courageous.
I'm Nick Vujicic, Mary Dawes,
Enthusiastically,
Dr. Mark Sherwood
as governor of Oklahoma.
The ending of slavery has hold up. We must see this as well.
We still have abortions in Oklahoma. Have life on a stop it right now. And I'm making right now every and complete abolish abortion in the state of the first of all.
Being rolled out our early Constitution biblical. Every state that's a member of the United States are still abide by the Constitution. That's what takes you
to the word mandate till I believe amendment, and that means state sovereignty. Suppose he sings on in Oklahoma that's affected by that ridiculous mandate. Push back and no, because federal does not own you. We need to own that amendment, understand what it is, and pray back.
We have to understand where critical race theory came from. Obviously, it comes from the Marxist handbook. And if we both emotion is social justice, it is not anti-racist. It's Martin Luther King Jr. talked about. We're not going all this to reach
First, there's one race. It's called the human race. I'm not going to apologize for being not even kids to be how to live life. Right now, we're teaching them trees how to educate. We will not do that under my administration. We will find every school that does, and they can take their education and find another state that looks sense. People all need to be healed. Our state needs to be healed. Our land needs to be healed. The economy needs to be healed. And our confidence needs to be healed. Our hope needs to be restored. God has gifted us as healers. We know that we're called to not just heal people individually like we do, but we know now we're called to heal a group of people called the state of Oklahoma. My name is Mark Sherwood, and I'm running for governor of the state of Oklahoma.